Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name's Claire Hobby from TCO Development, and we're really pleased to have you all with us today in the next installment of our Sustainable IT webinar series. And today we're going to be taking a look at our newly released progress report that was published yesterday called Impacts and Insights, and it's a look back at the first year of our new generation TCO Certified, which was launched last November. Okay, so looking at our agenda for today, we'll take a brief introduction to TCO Certified for those of you who may be new to the certification and need a little background. And then we're going to go straight into the 2016 Progress Report, focusing on three main areas where we've been able to measure the impact of TCO Certified during 2016 and some of the insights that we've gained through our verification rounds that we carried out last year. So specifically, we'll take a look at socially responsible manufacturing in the production phase, also hazardous chemicals, specifically looking at flame retardants. And then we're going to take a look at some of the insights we've gained into the IT industry's proactive work in socially responsible manufacturing. So that's even outside the scope of TCO Certified's criteria. So the report itself that we launched yesterday is called Impacts and Insights, and it's available for download at tcodevelopment.com. And you'll see there that the findings are based on the verification we did last year and also a direct follow-up from some assessment of factories and brand owners in 2014. So we were able to go back and do some comparison there as well. So go ahead and download it at your convenience. Just a brief overview of TCO Certified and a little bit about what it contains and what we do. We are happy to celebrate 25 years this year of product certification. We currently have IT products from 27 brands, and TCO Certified is available in 8 product categories. The certification contains life cycle sustainability criteria, specifically in social and environmental sustainability. And most importantly, we have a robust independent verification of compliance of products and also of brand owners and factories where the certified products are made. A little bit of a deep dive into what criteria are included. You'll see we look at the manufacturing phase, use phase, and end-of-life phase. And some of the main criteria areas, as you can see here, are socially responsible manufacturing, climate, environment, ergonomic design, user health and safety, for example. And again, you can find more information at tcodevelopment.com. So without further ado, I would like to present our speaker today, my colleague Nicholas Riedel, who is Director of the TCO Certified Program and an expert on sustainable IT issues and related criteria. So Nicholas will be able to walk us through some of the findings of the progress report, and we will get straight to that portion of the presentation. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Claire. So, first of all, I'd like to explain briefly how our independent verification works, because that's necessary to know before we proceed further into the presentation. So, before a certificate is issued, the product itself needs to go to an independent third-party test laboratory where the product is tested for visual ergonomics, environmental aspects, health and safety, and the product is reviewed and photographs and disassembled to see which panel it is inside and which type of materials are used. Then independent auditors need to visit the factory to verify the social compliance at the factory, and documents need to be reviewed from the brand owner to see that the brand owner has a management system that is adequate, that they have a code of conduct in place, and a lot of other documents regarding environmental and social aspects. When all of this is done, the third-party laboratory issues a verification report stating that the product complies with TCO Certified. This report is sent to TCO Development, and TCO Development can then issue a certificate. So this means that no certificate can be issued by TCO Development without this independent report. After the certificate is issued, TCO Development will constantly, every year the certificate is valid, do follow-up controls on the product. So TCO Development will purchase products from shops around the world and send them to independent laboratories for follow-up testing. And these products are chosen based on a risk assessment and to have an even distribution between the brand owners who use TCO Certified. Then TCO Development will pay auditors to go and visit some of the factories every year. These are independent third-party auditors who go there, visit the factories, and do social audits to see that everything is in order. These factories are also picked by risk assessment, and I will come further into that in the next slides. Finally, TCO Development also do a review of the brand owner's social engagement, and that is done by an interview with the responsible person at the brand owner. So each brand owner need to appoint a responsible senior management representative who reports to the top management and who is responsible for the implementation of their code of conduct in the supply chain. And this senior management representative is interviewed by TCO Development every year about their implementation. We ask them 20 questions about proactive work that goes beyond the scope of TCO Certified. We also ask them about their audit program. We want to see their audits, some of them. We want to see their corrective action plans, and we want to ensure that they have control over their supply chain and the social conditions there. All of the verification bodies that are involved in this are accredited according to ISO 17025, which is a quality standard for assessment bodies. We develop our certification system, TCO Certified, on a 3-year basis, and this is to keep up with the rapid development of IT products. So IT products change very quickly. There are new technologies arriving, other technologies disappearing, and to be able to have relevant criteria and relevant criteria levels, we launch a new generation of TCO Certified every 3 years. And this is a big challenge because behind the certification there is a lot of work. The first year after a new certification has been launched, we are doing analysis and stakeholder dialogue. So we contact our stakeholders, we contact our laboratories, the industry, the buyers, and we try to see how the new certification has been received, but also what these stakeholders would like to see in our next generation of TCO Certified. The next year, year 2, we are doing research and development of new criteria and revision of current criteria. And this is what we are doing 2017 now. So anyone who would like to be involved in our research and development work are welcome to contact us and hear what's happening and maybe be part of some of the research groups. Then in the year 3, which will be 2018, we are going to launch a draft of the new generation TCO Certified to all stakeholders. We are also going to do workshops in Asia where we go around and visit the industry. We are visiting some of the buyers and some of our other stakeholders to ensure that everyone has understood the new proposed criteria and to get the comments directly from everyone. Let's take a look at the impacts of our current generation of TCO Certified, which was launched in the end of 2015. Our purpose of this certification, the main focus was to increase the brand owner leadership for social responsible manufacturing, and also we wanted to make a new, completely new approach on the phase out of hazardous chemicals. We did a lot of other things in this generation of TCO Certified, but these two topics are the most important ones that we spent the most work on. So we have tried to measure the result of this. And since we launched the generation of TCO Certified, there has been 1 year now, 2016, and we have collected information and we've seen three big things that we have discovered. First of all, regarding social responsible manufacturing, we have done a case study where 16 brand owners are covered, and the factories that these 16 brand owners are using to produce TCO certified products have been monitored. And we can see that the factory conditions there and the code of conduct compliance in these factories have been improved a lot over the years. And I will talk more about that further on. We still see some challenges connected to labor law, and we see some improved action on conflict minerals. So the second thing that we have observed is regarding hazardous chemicals. And here we have seen that with our new criteria, only flame retardant chemicals that are benchmarked as safer alternatives are now included in TCO certified products. And we have also published a list, an official list of accepted flame retardant chemicals that have been benchmarked and that are pointed out as safer alternatives for anyone to use. The last observation we've done is from the interviews with the brand owners. And here we see that many brand owners have taken their work beyond the scope of TCO certified and improved the handling of corruption and worker grievance mechanisms. But we also see that there needs to be even more work in preventing nonconformities from happening in the first place. And to be able to do that, many brand owners need to increase their knowledge about the supply chain. So the first area, the social responsible manufacturing. This is all covered in the report that was published a few days ago, and I will summarize the most important part of that report, which is the statistics of the case study. This case study took place from 2013 to 2016. And the reason for that is that 2013 was the first year when we received third-party independent audits from the factories. We implemented a criteria, a mandate in TCO certified in the generation that was launched in the end of 2012, and the first report started to come in 2013. And at that time, 16 brand owners certified products, and all of the factories they were using, we could see that 11 of the brand owners had non-conformities connected to forced labor. 3 of the brand owners had factories where there were nonconformities connected to discrimination. 2 of the brand owners had factories with nonconformities connected to freedom of association. 11 had nonconformities regarding rights of the child, and 16 had nonconformities associated with health and safety in the factories. And for labor law, also 16 of the brand owners had nonconformities associated with the labor law. As you can see here, the blue color means that there are various types of nonconformities. What for the labor law, we thought it was interesting to point out the percentage or the ratio of different level of nonconformities. The red level means that it's a priority nonconformity, which should urgently be corrected. The orange one means that it's a major nonconformity that must also be corrected quickly, but not as quickly as priority. And the yellow is the minor nonconformity, which is less problematic, but it also needs to be corrected in the long term. So, during 2013, all of these factories that produce products for these 16 brand owners needed to develop corrective action plans. So they started to develop their corrective action plans together with the lead auditor for each audit. Then these corrective action plans were reviewed by TCO Development's independent laboratory to see if they were considered efficient to solve the problem. And finally, the manufacturer started to work according to this corrective action plan and try to solve the problem. And then in 2014 and 2015, there were follow-up audits and closure audits to close these nonconformities and also to review the factories from the beginning again. And during the years, we've seen that the number of violations and nonconformities that were found have reduced, and the new nonconformities that are found for new audits are also reducing. In 2016, we received new full audits from these factories, and now we can see that many of the areas, the nonconformities are not reoccurring. And this is something that's very interesting because what we can see here is that with the system of TCO Certified and the hard work and leadership from the brand owners, we have managed to achieve a situation, a robust situation, where we are closing nonconformities and we don't see reoccurring nonconformities in the same areas. One exception is labor law, where the big challenge in China is working hours. Working hours is very challenging because the local government in China has no interest in enforcing the law, the local law. And then brand owners who have manufacturing in China need to try to enforce the Chinese law inside their factory, and the government does not even bother to try to enforce it across the street. There are also a lot of migrant workers in China who travel to the city for 1 or 2 years to work and earn as much money as possible and then go home to the village. And for these workers, it's important to work overtime because it pays much more than regular time. With the Chinese law, you're allowed to work 9 hours overtime a week. When these migrant workers work one of the weekend days, it's already 8 hours, and then they have only 1 hour left according to the law, which is often too little for them. So it's a challenging situation. When factories enforce the local law, workers often tend to go across the street and work in other factories. This is something that we are looking at. We are working with several factories, and we have pushed down the limits from priority to almost only minor, and we are still engaged in trying to push these limits down further and also evaluate how that could be done. But the important thing with this slide is to show that the certification creates robust and long-term changes in the factories. And together with the brand owner's leadership that has increased a lot the last years, this is a very efficient way to move forward. We have tried to identify what are the success factors for these improvements. And the important success factors that we have identified is that the brand owner must be the responsible party, and the brand owner must be held accountable for the implementation of the social conditions in the factories. Brand owner is the top of the supply chain. The brand owner is the part that can influence the rest of the supply chain. And the brand owner is also the only part who has overview over the supply chain. Many brand owners use several factories, several OEMs who don't know each other, and the brand owner is the only one with all the cards visible on the table. That's why the brand owner must be the responsible part. We have license agreements with all the brand owners where we have a signature that they take responsibility for their code of conduct and the implementation of that code of conduct in the supply chain. So the second success factor and that is needed is that each of the brand owners must have a code of conduct that they are committed to. And this code of conduct should include the ILO core conventions, the United Nations Right of the Child, and the national health and safety and labor law in the manufacturing country. The next step and success factor is that the brand owner should be able to implement this code of conduct in the supply chain. We are verifying this capacity when we certify products by looking at the management systems and documents from the brand owner, but also by interviewing the brand owner once a year to see that the person in charge of this is capable and has the authority to implement it. Then it's necessary to measure the implementation and ensure that the implementation has been successful. And that is done by independent audits in the factories and in the supply chain. So in TCO Certified, independent third-party audits in the factories are mandatory, and that is a way to get a confirmation that the implementation has been successful. Finally, during these independent audits, almost all the time, non-conformities are found. This is not strange. This is something that will happen in Europe, in the US, anywhere you do an audit at a factory with 10,000 employees, you are going to find non-conformities. Otherwise, the auditor has not done a correct audit. So, non-conformities will be found, but the important thing is to handle these non-conformities responsibly according to corrective action plans. This is mandatory in TCO Certified, and also the brand owners need to take the leadership in this implementation of the corrective action plans. The brand owners must supervise these corrective action plans and have a dialogue with the factory and ensure that they are implemented successfully. Finally, the last success factor is that the corrective action plans must be followed up with a closure audit. There are situations, other situations where corrective action plans are requested but no one do any follow-up. And then there is no reason for the factory to really walk the talk. So all of the corrective action plans must be confirmed by closure audits. This is also mandatory in TCO Certified, and that is the reason why we can see these robust long-term improvements at the factories. Finally, we have also realized that collective brand engagement on one factory is a very strong tool to achieve improvements. We have seen some factories that are really large. These factories are often larger than the brand owners they sell products to. So in these cases, a single brand owner may not have enough leverage to convince the factory to do the necessary improvements. These are situations when the factory can dictate the rules and the brand owners just need to follow them if they want to keep producing at this factory. What we have seen in TCO Certified, we have a database where we can see all the brand owners who manufacture product at a single factory. This gives us the possibility when a factory has a nonconformity that they don't want to correct, or they are reluctant in resolving their corrective action plans, we can coordinate all of the brand owners who manufacture at that same factory. And in that way, the brand owners together represent enough spend at the factory for the factory to really take them seriously and make the necessary changes. This is a very important and very powerful way to drive social improvements in the factories. There are other situations in the market where brand owners normally only audit their own production lines in factories. And then a factory of 10 to 12,000 workers, maybe the production lines that get audited are only worked by a few hundred workers. But in TCO Certified, the whole factory is considered and all of the factory must be compliant so that workers cannot go between production lines. And also in this way, brand owners can use collective leverage on the factory. Then in the generation of TCO Certified that is out now, we have also included conflict mineral initiatives for the first time. When this was launched, 17 brand owners were having an official published conflict mineral policy. And now in 2016, we can see that 22 brand owners have published a conflict mineral policy. So this is a big improvement. It's very important to have a commitment and to show this commitment officially, but it's also important to do some concrete work in this area. And that's why we also included in TCO Certified that you must either support an in-region conflict-free sourcing initiative or do a due diligence process according to the OECD guideline. So in 2014, before our current generation of TCO Certified was launched, only 11 brand owners were supporting in-region conflict-free sourcing initiatives, and now almost double, 19 brand owners are supporting these initiatives. And these are initiatives in the area where the conflict occurs. It's ways to make it much more difficult for the criminals to source their materials, to process their materials. There are initiatives involving the smelters, involving marketing of conflict minerals, and these are great ways to support these countries instead of boycotting them. The final approach, the due diligence process according to the OECD guideline, is a very ambitious approach. It means that you should map up your supply chain to really see where your minerals are coming from and if there are conflict minerals. This is a work that can take a year or even more to do. It's challenging for brand owners as IT products have a very, very large and complex supply chain. It's a very big difference than for coffee or bananas or textiles. An IT product has so many different levels of suppliers. In 2014, before our new certification was launched, only 8 brand owners had done this work, and now about 18 brand owners are doing this due diligence process according to the OECD guideline. And this is something we're very happy about, because we think this is the most ambitious approach in minimizing the problems with conflict minerals. Finally, I would like to talk about the hazardous chemicals and how we are handling them in TCO Certified. The problem with chemicals in products is that this is not covered efficiently by the law. The law in most countries only ban some few chemicals that are proven to be dangerous. And all the other chemicals that have unknown effects to the human health and the environment are allowed to be used until someone proves that they are dangerous. And most often it's the government or the society that needs to spend the money and time to prove that they are dangerous, not the organization putting these chemicals on the market. So in TCO Certified, we have decided to turn this around and do something that no eco-label or law has done before. So instead of allowing all unknown chemicals in TCO Certified products, we have decided to only allow safer flame retardants with known effects to the environment and human health in TCO Certified products. So this both means that the substances that are in the products are known, and anyone who purchases a TCO Certified product can go into an official list and see exactly what chemicals that could be there. But it also means that all the chemicals have been assessed, and a scientific decision has been made if this is the best, least dangerous chemical to use for the purpose. Many of these flame retardants are necessary to have for the products not to take on fire. So something needs to be there, but we need to make sure that it's the best alternative. And this is what we have done in this generation of TCO Certified. This is the list, our official accepted substance list. It includes the name of the substance, the cost number, and the benchmark score. And as all of this information is available on the list, it's possible for anyone, any organization or company or person to challenge this list and come to us and tell us that they think we have given the product the wrong benchmark score. This makes the list credible and robust in the future, and we hope this list will be included much more chemicals in the future. The benchmarks are done according to the Green Screen system, which is a non-profit initiative in the US. Then I would like to tell you some of our insights into the industry's proactive work. And this is information that we've gained through our interviews with the industry's responsible persons for social responsible manufacturing. So, some of the positive insights that we've seen for the last year is that 19 brand owners have initiatives for dealing with corruption and embezzlement and extortion, and this is something that is not required in TCO Certified, but still many of the brand owners that certify products have decided to work with these challenging problems. 18 brand owners have systems for confidential handling of factory worker grievance mechanisms, and that's when workers have the possibility to anonymously report when there are problems in factories. This is also a very good trend. It's the best way for workers to be able to report when problems occur than for auditors to go there and visit. Then we have 18 brand owners who are in the process of developing and have developed the due diligence process according to the OECD guideline. As I told before, this is a very extensive work, and we're happy to see that so many brand owners have chosen this path. And then 12 brand owners have published information about their supply chains to make it more transparent and to make it possible for anyone to go in and see which factories are producing the products. Then we have seen some areas where we believe that we need more improvements. Only 8 brand owners actively support collective bargaining and free trade unions. In TCO Certified, it's mandatory to allow collective bargaining and free trade unions, but only 8 brand owners have initiatives where they actively support these tools. We believe that these tools are very efficient in creating improvements on the factory floor, and it's also often making a smooth cooperation and dialogue between workers and the management. Only 6 brand owners have knowledge about their supply chain beyond Tier 2. And Tier 2 is the supplier of the final assembly factory. And if you don't have the knowledge further down in the supply chain, it's difficult to implement the code of conduct in that part of the supply chain. So most of the brand owners have knowledge of the final assembly and the suppliers of the final assembly, but not further down. Only 7 brand owners have decided have a policy for the factories to cap the temporary employment at 10%. And as I said before, a very, very large amount of workers in Asia are migrant workers who travel from the countryside to the city, and they are often working on temporary contracts. And this is a challenging situation with worse security than if you have a real contract. So 10% maximum temporary employment is something to aim for, and more brand owners should push for this change. Finally, we can see that we would like to see even more preparedness to prevent nonconformities in the first place. We've seen a great improvement during 2016, and we would like to see even more improvements in the future regarding corrective actions and nonconformities. Finally, I would like to just explain our view of the purpose and role of a certification in procurement. Why do certifications exist? And what is the reason for buyers and brand owners to use them? A buyer has a very lot of challenges, and also the brand. And a certification will add value to both parties, just like a broker add values when you buy or sell a house. A buyer has challenges that consists of the need of specialist competence, especially when you are purchasing an IT product, which is an incredibly complex product. You need to have competence in environmental aspects, in social responsible manufacturing, in performance and electrical safety, etc. And with the certification helping you to set the criteria and to set reasonable criteria levels, you don't need to have that competence in-house. You also need to have resources for auditing the factories, that if you have set such criteria, you need to have competence to review that the product that you receive fulfill your performance and your environmental criteria. And this is also something that the certification offers you free of charge. Then, when you find violations or nonconformities in the factories, you need to have relationship with the industry for those nonconformities to be corrected. If you just ask, you have no relationship normally with a factory if you are a buyer. So you need to go through the brand owner, and you need to have those contacts to make the improvements happen. Then you need to trust the seller. And if the seller offers you a certified product, it's an independent party going in and providing that trust for you. Finally, if something happened, or if you need to answer to the media or to any NGOs, with the certification on your product, it's much more easy to respond to these external stakeholders than if you are standing there yourself and you need to explain about situations in factories or environmental aspects of the products that you purchased with tax money, for example. For a brand owner, the certification also adds value. You need to provide credibility to your claims. You are saying that you have good working conditions in the factories, you are talking about the environmental aspects and the performance of your product. With a certification, an independent third party goes in and verifies that for you. You also want to have fair competition in the market. You don't want other brand owners to win a big tender based on fake information. And if the tender requires certification, you know that all the parties bidding on that tender need to provide the same correct information to the buyer. You also want to see harmonized requirements. If every buyer asks for a factory audit for social conditions, and if every buyer have different requests of those social conditions, you will have a lot of headache. You will need to receive a lot of audits on your factories, and with the certification you have a harmonized requirement, you can participate in the development of those requirements, and you can also make sure that you have only one audit to cover your factory. There are also often issues with transparency and NDA from the factory and brand side, and you might not be able to share all the information with the buyer itself. So with an independent certification in between, you can share those sensitive documents with the certification body, and you can keep that transparency for yourself. For the media and NGO relations, there are also challenges when things happen in the factories, or when some uncomfortable news goes out. And if you have certified your product, you've done everything you can, you opened your doors to an independent party to look at your factories, to review and test your products, and you can always fall back on that when the media or the NGOs start asking you questions. So a certification reduces the risk both for the buyer and for the seller, and adds value for the product for both parties. And this is a value that should be taken into account during the procurement. So, thank you. I would like to give the word back to Claire, and then I'm open to answer any questions you may have on this.
Great. Thanks so much, Nicholas. Some great detail in there, and we have a couple of questions that we can kick off. And I know some of you had asked, if we look back at the 16 brand owner case study, you can find a list of which brands are included if you download the report. It's all in there. We thought the list may have been just a little long to go through in the webinar today, but it's all in the report at tcodevelopment.com. And yeah, it looks like we have some time for a couple of questions. And the first one, Nicholas, is what are the most common challenges to achieving closure in corrective actions in the factory?
Yes. The most common challenges that we've seen during these years are, I could say it's basically 4 challenges. The first and most important challenge is when there is a lack of consequence. If there is no consequence when you don't close your corrective actions, there is very less chance that the factory or OEM will really do all they can to resolve it. So there needs to be a consequence, otherwise there is no added cost for the factory and they will not do it. The second challenge is when there is a lack of brand leadership. Then the brand owner needs to supervise the corrective action and the implementation of it, and they need to show the factory that this is important for them. This is just as important as the cost for the product and for the quality of the product, and then the factory will make effort in trying to solve these problems. Then the third challenge we've seen, I would say, is low leverage on the OEM manufacturers. Some OEM manufacturers are incredibly large. I heard someone told me Foxconn has a factory of 1 million workers, for example, and many of the OEMs are incredibly large, and as a brand owner you might not have enough leverage. So combining leverage from several brand owners is a good way to solve this challenge, but this is a big challenge. And the last challenge, I would say, is the law in some countries, that the law is not enforced by the local governments. The local government want to attract industry to their country, and because of that they don't enforce the law enough. And it is difficult for a external company to enforce a law that the government does not enforce themselves. It creates twisted competition when some brand owners try to do it, and it's very difficult.
Okay, thanks, Nicholas. A couple of questions here about the tiered system in the supply chain. People are wondering tier 1, tier 2, how would we define tier 1 and tier 2 in the electronics industry? Could you describe that, Nicholas?
Yes. So we have defined tier 1 as the final assembly factories. This is the place where the products are assembled. So, for example, a notebook. Tier 1 gets at tier 1 you get the hard disks, and you get the chassis and the display panel, and then you put all of it together and you create the notebook. Tier 2, that's the level under, where the modules of this notebook are assembled, and tier 3 is the level below that, where components to the modules, to the panel and to the hard disks and motherboard and so on are assembled. And then further down you have components for these different PCBs and so on. So that is how we would define the different tiers. And the most common tiers to have overview over as a brand owner is the final assembly, where the product is assembled and packed in the box, and the suppliers of that final assembly factory.
Okay. I have a question about the on-site auditing. For the case study with the 16 brand owner case study, a question about the non-conformities there, and if the non-conformities that were issued as part of the on-site audits, were they part of a TCO certified specific audit, or are they issued as part of an SA 8000 or EICC audit that is then reported to TCO development?
I would say that the majority of these audits that were conducted were done because of TCO Certified, because TCO Certified, it was required in TCO Certified to deliver an audit, and then the audit was done. There might be a very limited number of audits that were already done, and then they were for other purposes, and then they were sent in to us when we asked for it. But the majority of audits, I would say, were done on our request.
Okay. And I see we have a few questions. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to them all today, but we will take one or two more. Something about chemicals. Nicholas, where do you see the chemicals criteria moving forward? So maybe talk about preparation for next generation TCO certified, or the future of the chemicals criterion?
Yes. Yeah, we see that the chemical situation is important for many reasons. First of all, of course, for the exposure to the user and to the environment. Many of the products are not recycled in a responsible way, so they are just burned, even if they're not supposed to, and then the chemicals can leak out. But also for the possibility of reusing the materials in the products. The products that we put on the market today, they will be available for reuse in 5 or 7 years. So we need to consider which chemicals are becoming banned by the governments in the future when we decide what chemicals we can put in the product today if we want to be able to use the plastics material in the future. So when we are implementing these chemical criteria, we are also thinking about the possibility of reusing these plastic in future products. And because of that, we have looked at flame retardant, which is a very important ingredients in plastics, but there are also other additives in the plastics. There are plasticizers to make the plastic softer. There are different type of coatings, and we are looking if it's possible to introduce other categories of chemicals in the coming generation in 2018. And we have not yet decided how we will do there. We have realized that this criteria that we have set now is quite challenging for the industry, and we need to take it in steps. It's only 3 years since we launched this criteria, and we need to, when we launch the next generation in 2018, there must be enough time for the industry to be able to adapt and implement these criteria that we are setting.
Great. Follow-up question then, Nicholas, also on chemicals. Are there any plans to develop criteria for chemicals in the production process in order to protect the workers in manufacturing?
Yes, we are looking at that. As I said, we are currently having a research and development year now where we are trying to develop the criteria for the new generation. And we are looking at production chemicals to see which ones that are possible to work with, if it's supposed to be restricted or if it's other ways to minimize the exposure to the workers. We need to see how we will handle it, but the purpose, of course, is to reduce the exposure on workers. When we are limiting the chemicals in the product, then of course these chemicals will never end up in production. So that is an easy way to ensure that the exposure will never take place. But some of the chemicals are not included in the product, is only used in production, and we are now looking at those types of chemicals to see if we can address any of them in the next generation of TCO Certified. We currently only rely on the audits that are done according to the health and safety audits for the social responsible manufacturing, and in those audits the exposure of dangerous chemicals are covered together with other health and safety issues. So if there are situations where they are lacking protective equipment or these things, then it will be covered in the audits that are done for social responsible manufacturing. But we will see if we can make specific criteria on the use of these type of chemicals in the future.
Okay, maybe time for one more question, and I apologize, we're not going to get to every question today. There's some really great ones there that we want to try and grab. Nicholas, a question about the circular economy. And do you believe the certification will change or adapt to address the needs of a circular economy?
Yes, we are also looking into that, and I think that we have categorized criteria that are connected to circularity. As I said, again, our chemical criteria is very much supporting a circular economy, as we are reducing the hazardous or the chemicals that are probably going to be banned in legislation in 5 to 10 years. These chemicals are already banned now for us. So this makes the plastic material possible to recycle. We are also looking at aspects such as making computers, for example, possible to recycle by making it possible to change the keyboard easily for different language settings, so that a batch of 10,000 computers in Sweden could be used in another country easily, and how we could avoid certain components that tend to break more easily than others. We have projects running where we are looking into criteria connected to circularity. And you will definitely see these type of criteria in the new generation 2018.
Thanks, Nicholas. I think that's probably all the time we have for questions today, but thanks again for all your fantastic questions. Before we finish today, I just want to invite you to visit our homepage, tcodevelopment.com, and there you can download a full version of the report. You can also follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletters, and as Nicholas mentioned, we're moving into the development of our next generation, which will be launched at the end of 2018. And we're going to be moving into a phase where we invite comments on drafts and some of the more final output versions of what we'll be publishing. So feel free to go, join us there, and we will look forward to welcoming you on our next webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.